Welcome to the Engineering with Nature podcast. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been working on the Engineering with Nature initiative since 2010, working and collaborating to advance the use of natural processes and systems to deliver a broad range of economic, environmental, and social benefits. EWN develops and implements nature-based solutions for water and infrastructure projects. It brings together a growing international community of practitioners, scientists, engineers, and researchers to harness the power of nature to innovate and solve problems and create sustainable solutions. This podcast tells their stories. Now here's your host, Sarah Thorne of Decision Partners.
In September 2021, our guest said, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is walking the path of innovation with our partners through the Engineering with Nature initiative, integrating human engineering with natural systems. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 6. Todd Bridges, Senior Research Scientist for Environmental Science with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the National Lead for the Engineering with Nature program, and I are very pleased to welcome our special guest, Lieutenant General Scott Spellmon. General Spellmon is the 55th Chief of Engineers and the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Indeed. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've really been looking forward to this conversation with you and understanding what we're doing within the Corps and what the future holds. Thanks for being here.
Well, first of all, hey, thanks, Dr. Bridges. And Sarah, I want to thank you for hosting me today. I think, I've been fighting to get on this program for some time, and so I appreciate everyone's patience. And Dr. Bridges, Todd, thank you for your leadership on a topic that's important to all of us, not just us within the Army Corps of Engineers, but certainly our many partners and our elected leaders, and frankly, the American people that live, that work, that recreate on the water, and want to see us succeed as we continue to endeavor to engineer more with nature in everything that we do across our great country. And I think I have committed to this, even in congressional testimony. And I'll just say it up front, we got to do more of this in our projects, in our programs, and just a personal thank you for your great leadership, Todd, up front in working to help us advance engineering with nature across the Corps. So I look forward to this discussion today.
Well, we certainly do too. General Spellmon, one of the goals for our podcast is to really inspire the next generation of practitioners. And you're an engineer by training, and since September 2020, you've been the Chief of Engineers for the whole Army Corps of Engineers. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah, and Sarah, I'll be brief. First of all, I'll say it's the honor of a lifetime to serve as the 55th Chief of Engineers. I started on this career back in 1986, graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point, commissioned into engineers. And then for the first 29 years of my career, I was out in the operational Army serving in our many engineer tactical battalions and brigades. I came to the Corps of Engineers for the first time late in my career. I was a one-star for 2 years when General Bostic, the 54th Chief of Engineers, called and said, "Scott, it's time to bring you over." And I was blessed. He sent me out to the Northwest Division. And the Northwest Division was a great introduction for me on the topic that we're discussing today, engineering with nature, because we had two different approaches. One basin, the Columbia, where engineering with nature was demanded, it was expected, and something we worked hard on every day. And then I jump over to my other basin, Missouri River Basin, where we were faced with a lot of skepticism on this topic. And so, in fact, in 2019, Sarah, I was out in a field hearing in Iowa. This was following the 2019 bombogenesis that came through and overtopped nearly every levee we had between Omaha and St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in that field hearing, and one of the things I talked about was the need, I think, for more setback levees on the lower 735 miles of the lower Missouri River. Setback levee to me is engineering with nature, right? We're giving it more room to roam. And I recall after that hearing, a prominent stakeholder came up to me and said, "Spellman, don't ever mention those two words again on this basin. And I remember telling that stakeholder, well, then you've got to be prepared for more of the same. And that's what I think we're faced in some corners of our enterprise internally, and then certainly with our partners. It is making the case on the, as Dr. Bridges says all the time, the comprehensive benefits that engineering with nature brings to us in our program. Now, I've given you a very extreme example of some of that skepticism that's out there, but we have, and I hope we get a chance to talk about them today, we have so many examples where engineering with nature is going right. And I think this is just, thank you for doing this podcast. It gives us a chance to share not only internally, but with our many partners, how this can be done and what right looks like. So again, thank you for having me today.
I think your example is a really good one. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the practices that you've seen change, some of the engineering practices that you've seen change and evolve in your time with the Army Corps?
Yeah, so my time with the Corps is, compared to many others, has been relatively brief. I've been with the Corps now for about 7 years. And I say this all the time. I always say, boy, these are really historic times for the Army Corps of Engineers, and it just seems to get more historic each and every year with the level of investment and the level of trust that our elected leaders have placed in this agency to deliver on a massive program. And Sarah and Todd, you've heard me say this before. We are built, we're structured, we're manned for what has historically been, over the past several decades, a $20 billion annual program for all of the commanders and customers that we support. And today that program is well over $90 billion. So I've always said this, it's that massive program, that massive workload, it's our number one challenge, but it's also our number one opportunity. And we really have to be innovative in taking the team that we have today, that we're structured for that $20 billion program, and transforming it into one that can deliver on a $90+ billion program. And innovation is going to be key. And thinking about things differently, not only thinking about them differently, executing them differently out in the field. And I just think there are many opportunities on engineering with nature that are going to help us get after this very challenge.
I would add, I see when I go out to the field, and that's one of the blessings of the position I have had, is to be able to just get out like General Spellmon and engage with teams across the entire country. And it gives you such a perspective that really can't be matched in any other way. But what I see is I see a lot of excitement and energy across the Corps, where we're leaning into this future of innovating and of combining nature and engineering. But I'll say that in combination with, there are growing pains too associated with that, because there's really no easy path to innovation and change in a organization like the Corps, 35,000 plus teammates with a legacy that goes back over 200 years. So we should expect and plan for tensions and growing pains, if you will. That's not a symptom of failure. That's actually a symptom of growth and progress. If you don't have any tension in your organization, you probably aren't doing anything, important. And so the Corps of Engineers, in my 30 years, the Corps of Engineers is a great organization, and it's up to the challenge. I am fully persuaded it's up to the challenge of being a better, more innovative organization in the future. And of course, in this topic area of finding ways to combine nature and engineering.
And Todd, I would just add to everything you just said, we have some real success stories out there. And I think of some of the things that we've done over the past several years. It doesn't jump out, hey, we actually are engineering with nature. We just didn't call it that when we started down this path. But in fact, we have some real success stories out there. And again, I hope we get a chance to talk about those today, because it's important, I think, internally and externally for folks to see that this can be done.
Give us a couple of examples of the kinds of things that you're thinking about, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to give 3 examples, and just stop me if I'm running on too long. But Dr. Bridges, you just got back from Florida, right? And so I think one that always jumps out to me is Kissimmee River restoration. So, if you go back to the I think it was 1948, Congress authorized the Central and South Florida project that was designed to help us provide better flood control in South Florida. And we designed a systems of canals and levees that actually worked extremely well. It moves water out of South Florida like a locomotive. And it solved the flooding problem that we had endured for many, many years. And it enabled agriculture and development in ways that I don't think people ever contemplated back when we first had this project authorization. But part of the Central South Florida project was the Kissimmee River, a winding river north of Lake Okeechobee, and we straightened it out. We took all that natural curves and bends, we took that natural vegetation because we wanted to move water quickly. Now, it performed as it was designed, but when our engineers back in the late 40s, early 50s never contemplated the water quality challenges that would emerge in Florida over the ensuing decades. So along comes the Central Everglades Restoration Plan in 2000 and asked us to relook at what we had done back in the Central and South Florida project and are there improvements we can make. And part of that, the CERP program was the Kissimmee River restoration. So we went back and put together what Mother Nature had always intended. We put the natural bends back in the Kissimmee River north of Lake Okeechobee. We restored the natural vegetation that was once there. And if you go look at that landscape today, the wildlife has come back. That natural vegetation actually serves as a filter for many of the contaminants that the nitrogens and the phosphorus that find themselves into that water column. And it is to me, it is one great example of success on engineering with nature. But we probably didn't call it that back in 1990 when we had that authorization. I'll give you. I got a couple. Let me give you one more. I think we talk often about down in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina in 2006, the Hurricane and Storm Damage Risk Reduction System, or HSDRS, and that was designed for a 100-year event, and that 100-year event came in 2021 in Hurricane Ida. And if you look at the way that concrete, steel, and that compacted earth performed, it performed as it was designed in protecting the city of New Orleans. But my argument is it performed as it was designed because it had a great set of shock absorbers out in front of it. And this was all of the barrier island work that the state of Louisiana has done over the past decade, all the work that they have done, Todd, out in the marshes that absorbed a lot of that energy from that storm before it even got to the HSDR system. But again, I think an example where we are engineering with nature and we might just not call it that. So I think one of the challenges, and Todd, you've been out and you've seen this, one of the challenges that we have, I think, internally in the Corps is too many folks have the mindset that you're out there and we're out there advocating for engineering with nature as a substitute for engineering solutions. And that's not what we're saying. The engineering with nature complements our solutions. And that's the way that we have to look at that, and is find those cases where we can really get some complementary effects, multiple benefits to our engineering designs. And then there's more we could talk about. And Poplar Island. Some of you have been to. I've testified to Congress that I wish I had a Poplar Island outside every one of our 577 federal navigation channels across the country. Great beneficial use of dredge material, where we are restoring an island that once was that has been affected by storms and sea level rise, and we're putting it back. And I've had the opportunity to visit out there, and you look at the wildlife that has returned, the terrapins that are now back. It is a great, and the state uses it this way. It is a great environmental classroom, not only for engineers, but for our students out there in our surrounding school districts. But a number of examples where I think that the teams are just hitting it out of the park with engineering with nature. Just want to do more of it.
Yeah, Sarah, you're understanding why it was so great for us to be able to have General Spellmon on the podcast today, because he can speak so substantively and articulately about this topic. And I just want to emphasize one important point that he made, and that is we need to get past the nature or engineering paradigm to the nature and engineering paradigm. It's a false choice, this either or. It's finding the balance and the combination, and for us to be more explicit about about how it is nature contributes to the value of our overall system in terms of the benefits to engineering and economics, but also the social resilience that our communities need, as well as the environmental resilience. And there are, as he's been describing, there are tremendous examples across the course portfolio that go back 100 years that illustrate what we've tried to, capture in this term engineering with nature.
And Dr. Bridges, can I just also add to that? I think, large due to your work, but we are winning over some of our critics. So I mentioned the Lower Missouri River and, the comment that was made to me following a field hearing in 2019. Now, it took another year. But we actually had our first, I believe it was our first, setback levy on the Lower Missouri River system in a place called Atchison County in Missouri. It was levy 536 on the left descending bank of the Missouri. And it took the help of a partner that I did not expect to help us get that setback levy over the finish line. It was the Nature Conservancy, and some very young, energetic folks helped us come out in that corner of our enterprise, communicate to a group of, be frankly, skeptical stakeholders. They just helped us communicate the comprehensive benefits that something simple that you and I would think of as a setback levy, how that was actually going to help in the long term. And sometimes it's about partnerships and reaching out to folks that can help us deliver this message.
I want to pick up on that, and I want to move us along and talk about innovation, because I know that's something that you are extremely supportive of. It's one of your things. So the Corps has such an important leadership role in the country and also internationally, and you've got so much responsibility to deliver on all of your missions at the same time. You're working on an unprecedented number of infrastructure projects that you alluded to. Can you talk a little bit about that, sir, and talk about the leadership and the innovation that's required to deliver on these projects? You have to do things a bit differently to deliver on all those projects.
So, Sarah, as I said, I think this massive workload, it's certainly our number one challenge, but it's also our number one opportunity. And so we're going to get plenty of swings at this as we move forward. So I think at my level, the best things I could do, there's three things that I have in mind. One is we've got to do better. I've got to do better, whether it's in testimony up on the Hill or speaking to a group of 42 district commanders at our executive governance meeting. I've got to do better. We all got to do better at sharing our ideas, right? So I just mentioned three or four districts that have great examples of engineering with nature and how they did it. I've got to do a better job in sharing those best practices with the other 42 districts, right? To show the goodness in that. Second one, I think we need to listen more as an agency and listen to folks. I just mentioned the Nature Conservancy that helped us communicate out in Atchison County in Missouri. And there are a lot of partners out there like the Nature Conservancy that can help us deliver this message, not only to our partners, but also internally. So listening more and then innovating, right? We not only have to be open to new ideas, to listen to new ideas, we have to be open to attempting these ideas out in the field, right? And many successes are born out of failure, right? And failure is okay if we're learning from it and we're taking it to the next level. I think that is a risk, a culture of risk in the Corps that we're working hard to overcome. So again, I think sharing ideas, listening more, and then just being open to applying, not only listening, but applying new ideas out in the field.
One of the things that I hear regularly out in the field from practitioners across the spectrum is how important it is for them to hear leadership within our organization communicate clearly direction and intent. And it's not a one and done communication. There's a process of reinforcement that the staff who have a significant job to do in executing this $90 billion program to hear from the various levels of leadership within the organization what it is we're trying to do, and it's not that they don't hear it, but people need, ongoing reinforcement. And I think it's so important, the point you just made about listening, because effective listening requires a good measure of humility. We don't always have the right answer, or we need others to help contribute to, if you will, co-developing that answer. And that requires an ability to actively listen to others, to engage substantively and over the long term with our partners and stakeholders. And that's a work in progress for many government agencies in my experience. And I think they're great examples of this practice within the Corps that we can expand. And maybe on the last point about the risk taking, there is no risk-free innovation, period. If you're not accepting any risk, that I can guarantee you are not innovating. So we have to manage risk because we have to be responsible about it. We're not going to be, cowboys and cowgirls out there, just do whatever you want to do. So you have risk to manage, but you've got to accept the idea that risk is a part of innovating and moving forward.
Todd, well said. And I think there's another side to this too, in communicating that risk to our partners. So I know Todd's very familiar with some of the challenges that we've had on the Miami Back Bay study, right? So here is a community, for all the right reasons, would like to get some infrastructure in place to combat sea level rise and the ever increasing storms that we're seeing, particularly in South Florida. And then we had some partners out there that were critical of the Corps, because here we come with our ugly, concrete wall and steel engineering solutions to help combat these threats to these communities. And again, for all the right reasons, these communities want to demand more. No, we want to see more natural and nature-based features incorporated into this plan, and they're right to demand that from us. But we also have to communicate the risk. So if you're familiar with this particular study, because it plays out in other corners of the enterprise as well, there's a lot of humanity living right up on the water's edge, right? And to get after some of these innovations, we need some real estate to work with, right? So it's also communicating that aspect of it, I think, to our partners. That, and Todd, you said it. It's about the integration of engineering solutions with the natural, with nature-based features. It's not an either or. And I think that's an important conversation to have with some of our partners as well on the topic of risk. But you said it very, very well.
General, you've talked about partnering, and certainly Todd's talked a lot about partnering as a critical component of engineering and nature. Can you share your thinking about the importance of these relationships and partners in terms of advancing the innovation that's required?
Yeah, and so partnering is one of my 4 priorities that I set out on just over 2 years ago when I came to the Corps. And you may have heard me say, I think we're a bit inconsistent on the topic of partnering, the verb, and partnerships, the noun. And so we have some districts that do this extremely well, very, very good at it. And we have some others that we could use a lot of improvement. So we've put out some new doctrine to the field, because it's been a number of decades since we talked to the field in an official way and published guidance on the topic. So that's out there. We have a great partnering playbook. But really, at the end of the day, what this is about is something we talked about earlier, and that is listening more, right, to people that do this very well. So I talked about the Nature Conservancy and how they helped us make the argument for the setback levy in Atchison County in Missouri. Beneficial use of dredge material. I think one of the national leaders on this topic to me is the Port of Baltimore. And the Port of Baltimore, right, we have Poplar Island there, and we've mentioned that, and a great example of beneficial use of dredge material. But they also have 6 pilot projects that they are under. The port is funding some innovation in how to make, there's some business opportunities on the use of dredge material, and they are exploring this now, and they're on the way in different stages on these 6 different pilots. But it's, I think it's getting our experts up there to listen and to talk to them on their experiences, their successes, their failures, so that we can learn from our partners on how to advance this even more. Todd, I mentioned Todd being down in South Florida recently. You look at what South Florida Water Management District, some of the innovation that they've taken into some of their, call them the stays, or stormwater treatment areas that actually serve as natural filters for to address some of the water quality challenges that they are facing. Again, these are not mechanical filters that they're running this water through. This is natural vegetation that historically has removed nitrogen and phosphorus from the water column And some are working better than others, but they are sharing their lessons learned, and some of them are working incredibly effectively. We have a lot to learn from partners like that.
I have said before that progress runs on the rails of relationships. And that is, that's the experience I've accumulated in 30 years. There really is no progress without relationships with others. Now, I will say within the Corps, on General Spellman's point, there are internal relationships and there are, if you will, external relationships. And the Corps is a big organization. And there's a lot of progress we can make and a lot of benefit we can make by working the internal relationships so that we are sharing practices across our own boundaries. And of course, there's a challenge here because of the scope of the Corps' program. Everybody is really busy, but this is where, Engineering with Nature or the Engineering Research and Development Center, we need to convene and help facilitate the sharing of practice, of great practice across the Corps, so that Baltimore District's practices are well known and understood in San Francisco District, even though they're on, opposite coasts. And then, the external relationships are so important. There are so many great practices and so many people and organizations, again, what I hear, they're just itching. They just want to have a more substantive relationship with the Corps and to engage with us. They want us, to come out of the castle, sir, to use your visual metaphor. They want us to come out of the castle, meet them, and do work together.
Yeah, and that's why I use that analogy of the castle. We've tried to lift the gates and drop that drawbridge and let people in, and the lights are turned on, the windows are open, the window shades are up. And it's just all about being more open and transparent, not only with our partners, but with ourselves.
We certainly heard at the Measuring What Matters Summit in December that there was a very strong desire for your partners to work together with you on integrating nature-based solutions into the major infrastructure challenges that you're facing now. And a lot of people were talking about the urgency. The time, they said, is we've got 10 years to do it. What do you think about that urgency and, what you can do from the top of the house?
Yeah. And so you're right. What a great opportunity we have with the program right here in front of us. So I think, Sarah, the example I would use here is our metrics for the beneficial use of dredge material. Mm-hmm. And so for our listeners who may not be aware, over the past several decades, we have beneficially used about 30% of all of our dredge material each year. It went to a beneficial use project. The other 70% went into a management site or it went out into an ocean disposal site. And so the course that we set out from the headquarters is, hey, let's reverse those numbers. Why don't we try to make beneficial use of 70% of the material that we pull up each year, and then 30% can go to an ocean disposal. So that's just a path that we've been on. I am proud to report, Todd, that our latest numbers, we're making progress. We're no longer 70-30, we're 60-40. So we've gone up by a factor of 10. That's important. But Sarah, to get to your point, we're looking for more of those opportunities with our partners like the Poplar Islands that are out there, and some of the different thinking that we're seeing. I mentioned the Port of Baltimore, the Port of Toledo, also doing a lot of work on this front where we can learn from. And so, flipping our numbers from 70-30 to 37, that's not going to happen overnight. That's going to take many years, and there's some work that's got to happen in front of it. But I think it's important as leaders of this organization, everyone on this call, that we set that path and challenge our subordinates to let's pursue this, because it's good for us and it's good for the nation, and it just makes good sense from a budgetary position, but also makes it great for a great environmental case as well.
Yeah, I just want to commend General Spellman's leadership on this point, and to help the audience who might not be so familiar with the Corps of Engineers understand the scope of this. I mean, just in round numbers, because it makes the math and understanding easier. I mean, we dredge on the order of about 200 million cubic yards of sediment a year in the Corps of Engineers. So flipping that around to go to 70% beneficial use is no small thing to do. But an organization as great as the Corps of Engineers needs to have great goals. substantive goals. I might even use the word audacious. If we're not setting out audacious goals for ourselves, I'm not sure, we're showing the respect we should have for ourselves, in what we're doing. And we could make such a difference going forward in achieving 70% beneficial use, because sediment, in a sense, is the currency that we would use, to create nature-based solutions value along our rivers and coastlines and estuaries and bays. So this is a big deal for the Corps of Engineers to set out this goal for itself.
And you're right, Todd. Let's just be bold, right? Let's just be bold. And because I know we've got great folks in the Army Corps of Engineers, our people, our number one strength, our number one asset, and they deserve bold goals, and they will chase it.
Bold and audacious, to say the least. I know that when that goal came out, there were a lot of people going, "Whoa, that's a big stretch goal." But it's fantastic that you're making the progress you're making. And I want to talk about those bright people. One of the keys to innovation is having the best and the brightest people, all from all different disciplines, working together, working collaboratively. General, can you talk a little bit about your thinking about the workforce of the future? What kinds of people do you need?
Wow, I love our workforce. Just a quick story. I was out on the Middle Missouri last week, where we have had crews working around the clock, since the fall, on this low water event that we're experiencing out there. So I'm talking about the reach of the Mississippi between St. Louis and all the way down to Cairo. And we had a number, this is, it's really the low water's hitting us at an incredibly critical time as farmers and work to get crops out to New Orleans and out to market. And we had a number of groundings. And I was out last week on the Dredge Potter, the Dredge Hurley, and the Dredge Jadwin, and got to spend a couple of days with those crews. I don't know if people know this. On one of those dredges, the whole crew, they're out on holiday leave. Everyone is out with their families, spread all across the country. We gave them 24 hours notice to get from Vicksburg District up to that reach of the river, and they did it. This crew did it. Now they didn't get everybody back from the organic crew, but we had people on that dredge from all over the enterprise that put their hand up and said, "Volunteer, we'll go." And but that's the type of people. I get the blessing because I get to see all of it. I get to travel probably more than anybody in the Army Corps of Engineers, and I get to see these people each and every day that I'm out in the field. And I could repeat that story 42 times over because that's the mentality our people have in the Corps. We've got an engineering challenge. We're going to jump on it, and we're going to keep the nation whole, and we're going to keep our waterways open. And I had the opportunity. I do this every holiday. I do it on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. My team out here gives me a list of everybody that's on duty on those holidays. And so I don't get to call all of them. There's hundreds of them, but I get to call the operators that are at the locks and dams and just wish them and thank them for what they do each and every day. And because the business of ours does not stop on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day or New Year's Day. They're out there passing traffic. They're out there ensuring the releases from our dams are on time and in the right quantity. And it's just an opportunity to thank them. And it's just amazing the amount of, I'm calling to pump them up on a holiday, but I leave those phone calls feeling more pumped up and incredibly proud of the organization that I'm blessed to lead. We have great people.
I couldn't agree more with you in my experience as well. It's easy to get distracted in life by the trivialities that you have to deal with and the sources of frustration here and there that exist everywhere. But what I've observed, when you give somebody something important to do in the Corps of Engineers, they're going to get after it. And I think communicating the importance and the impact of what we're doing is one of the messages that we need to be clear and consistent and constant about sharing with others, because people are looking for important things to do. And I think it's one of the keys of recruiting, talent, because we have nearly an insatiable appetite for the workforce, of bringing people into the workforce. And people are wanting to have impact with what they do. They want their work to be important and meaningful to communities. And I'll just say to our audience members, if you want a place to work where you can make a difference every single day, then the Corps of Engineers is an organization for you.
Well said, Todd. And we cannot hire people fast enough to get after this massive program. But we want to hire the right people with the right specialties and with the right mindset. That expeditionary, innovative mindset that we have with some great talent here in the Corps. And of course, everyone on this call is part of that. So thank you for all you do.
Well, in addition to that, I think we want to hire people that have this go get after it, personality, a way they do things. And we need to provide them the means to do that, right? That in terms of supporting their training and their ongoing development as professionals. And I think this is an opportunity we have through the Network for Engineering with Nature to partner with our academic partners to make sure that our professionals have access to the information and to the emerging technologies and tools that they need to actually deliver on the $90 billion program. And I think that's an exciting part of our future, too.
Sarah, can I just mention this quickly? And one of the things I want to do again, when Word of 20 came out, I was down on the other end of the hallway, and one of the things that we wanted to do is it authorized a series of studies, feasibility studies, and we went through those. We combed through those, and we said, okay, what are the ones that really have the opportunities for solid engineering with nature that will complement the concrete and steel and compacted dirt that these projects will be calling for? And I asked Todd, I said, Todd, can you get on the road and go meet with Great Lakes and Ohio River Division, because we have this Great Lakes Coastal Resiliency Study. And wow, and there's so many opportunities on the vastness of that study where engineering with nature can play a prominent role. And so, Todd, you did it with your team and went out there, and I'm glad to report that is all making progress with that particular team and in many others. So we have Word of 22. It's out. It also authorized a number of studies, and I've asked the Civil Works team, let's go through those now and look for those opportunities that are out there. And let's get our experts out in the field talking with those PDTs and those planning teams so that we're looking at this up front and not trying to engineer it in late in the process. So, Todd, there's a short list coming your way for the team to help us get out to the districts and advance this program even further.
Yeah, we look forward to that.
Sir, before we wrap up, we've got to talk a little bit about the future. And Todd has a really good question for you. So I'm going to turn it over to him to ask it.
So we had on the podcast, as you know, General Kelly and General Gant.
Great leaders.
And I asked them this question, and I'm going to compare the quality of your answer to theirs and make a judgment about that.
They're hard to beat. Both those two they're hard to beat.
Oh, they are, but I think you're up to it. How will we build the Army Corps of Engineers of the future? What are the elements of that? What are the materials and the methods and the means? When you think about that as the 55th Chief of Engineers, how do we build the Corps of Engineers that we want to have 50 years from now?
Yeah,
that's my question.
So, Todd, and I'm not sure how Tony and Jason answered that question. So I had the benefit when I came to be the chief that I was just down on the other end of the hallway. So I had a front row seat to watch this program build over time. And one of the things that the secretary, it was Secretary McCarthy at the time, and General McConville had asked me to do, hey, let's reestablish the USACE campaign plan and come back and brief me. They gave me 60 days. Come back and brief me on where you want to take the Corps. So I mentioned my 4 priorities earlier. We set a line of effort on each one of those. And I have 23 sub-objectives broken down into each one of those lines of effort that I see are critical to taking the Corps to the next level. Let's take an organization that was built for $20 billion a year, and let's transform it to one that can safely deliver quality projects on time within budget with a $90+ billion program. And there is a whole line of effort that is just dedicated to diversity and people. And when I think of diversity, the first thing that I talk to people about is I'm after diversity of thought, right? Because we have so many projects across this country and PDTs working where we don't look like the communities in which we work. And so now we have the data to support our workforce demographics, and we actually have commanders actively working to increase the diversity of thought within their organization, because I think it's the diversity of thought that's going to bring this organization into the future. But the other 22 objectives are just as important to me on those, and I get a brief every week on the campaign plan and take it by line of effort, and something that we're pushing hard on, Todd, to take us into the future.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments on this. We are a creative organization. Of course, we could always be more creative, but that diversity of thought really is the material substance that's the basis of creativity, and I'm hopeful about the future of our organization. I appreciate your leadership on this point.
Well, thank you.
I love that. I love the diversity of thought, and also the listening that you mentioned, sir. More listening, more partnerships, more collaboration to really move innovation along and do the great work that you're doing at the Army Corps. Thank you so much, General Spellmon, for being on our podcast, taking the time to share your perspectives with us about the future, the imperative to accelerate innovation, but also the role and value that you see of engineering with nature and the integration of nature-based solutions. It's just been a pleasure to have you on our podcast, and thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, Sarah and Todd, this is the best part of my day. It actually is. We've got a number of sticky challenges that are going to fill the calendar for the rest of the day, but thank you for being patient with me and getting on to this podcast and this program. And anything that I can do to enhance the communication of this effort, I want to be a part of it. But I certainly want to say thanks to you in particular, Dr. Bridges, for your leadership on this and helping us advance the Corps to the next level on engineering with nature. Critically important.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I so appreciate and want to thank you for your service and your leadership within the Corps. It's been so important to the organization and so important to me and to what we're doing with engineering with nature. I can't thank you enough for the support you've offered to us and what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
You've given us a lot to think about, sir, so thank you so much for being on the podcast. And to all of you, thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and we hope you'll join us again when we talk about engineering with nature.
The EWN podcast was developed by Sarah Thorne and Jeff King, Deputy National Lead, Engineering with Nature Initiative, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. For more information, you can visit our website, engineeringwithnature.org. The EWN podcast is produced by Eye Contact Productions for the Engineering with Nature program within the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'm Dave Trafford.